Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Calls. This is the 2026 ISCO full show. While all of the attention, or most of the attention, is over in Scotland, rightfully so, for the Scottish Open, there is an alternate field event in Louisville, Kentucky this week at Hurstbourne Country Club for the ISCO Championship tournament that is local to me. And quite honestly, I talk about it every time there's an alternate field event. I really do like these events. There's a lot of value to be had, particularly on the odds boards, if you are willing to put in a little bit of work, since all of the attention is on the main slate. So the goal, as always, is to find those values to complement what you're already going to get at the Scottish Open. So we are going to cover everything for the ISCO in one evening: the research, the data, and the DFS all in one show. We have a lot to get into. Let's not waste any more time. All statistics provided tonight and moving forward are from both the Rabbit Hole over at BetSperts and Fantasy National. The Rabbit Hole is merging with Fantasy National. Make sure you are a subscriber to the Rabbit Hole. It has everything you need weekly for the PGA Tour, for both the main slate and alternate field events. It has tournament simulators, lineup optimizers, articles from a lot of the great minds in the industry. Really wish I would have migrated myself over to the Rabbit Hole sooner. I am here now. Make sure you are a subscriber to the Rabbit Hole. It is well worth your investment. In the description to the video, there are links to all the social media. First off, my X and Instagram, where normally I post research early in the week regarding some patterns of previous winners, some tournament and course info. I've put that on hold until I fully migrate all of my data over to the Rabbit Hole formatting and BetSperts golf formatting. But when that resumes, if you want to see the weekly research that I do on the PGA Tour, give me a follow at your preferred social media site. X is also where I place my weekly betting cards and top player usage in the DFS contest I play that comes out every Wednesday after the DFS Tactics show. So for this week, I will have two separate betting cards, or one giant one, if you will, combining the two tournaments. And I'll have two player percentage charts showing which the players that I'm using in each tournament. So if you want to see that information, give me a follow over at X. Lastly, for social media, Gabe's handle's in the description. He writes a great article called The Fringe. He continues to update you throughout the week with his own version of research. I highly recommend it. I've enjoyed working with him for the past few years now. As always, his social media page is where we put our 2026 Picks Challenge. So make sure you're following them over on social media as well. Show them some support. And then lastly, for this intro, we are live. Chat's open. Want to hear from you. How much do you know of Hurstbourne Country Club? What do you think of the tournament? Are you going to be paying any attention? Hopefully so, since you're tuning in tonight. Who are you targeting? Who are you staying away from? Anything and everything ISCO Championship. Put your thoughts and opinions in the chat. Be more than happy to get to those. And if you're not able to catch the show live, put your thoughts and opinions into the comments. I'll always get to those as well. So let's get into it. Let's do the full show, the research, the data, and the DFS for the 2026 ISCO. We're going to start as we would normally do, and I need to fix my green screen, go the other way. There we go. Hopefully it stays. Or do I need to tilt my camera a little bit? There we go. Apologies for that. We are going to start as we normally would with with our research portion, normally on Sunday nights, with the tournament fact sheet, the GCSA tournament fact sheet. Good evening, Pre. Thanks for jumping in chat. Much appreciated. Can we look at Stephen Fisk? Absolutely. We will definitely take a look at any players that you want to. I will say it's going to be a bit more quick or minimalistic, considering we have a lot to cover, research, data, and DFS all in one night. But since you're here, since you asked, we will definitely take a look at Stephen Fisk. But thanks for jumping in chat, Pre. Very, very much appreciated. Hopefully you're ready for the Scottish and the and everything there. And are you going to be playing DFS? Are you going to make any wagers regarding the ISCO? Good evening, Hanka. Thanks for jumping in chat. Much appreciated. You're wanting to see some info on Ziching or Marty Doe. So let me get through a couple of things here, and then we'll take a look at those two players. But thanks to both of you for jumping in chat this evening. Hurstbourne Country Club in Louisville, Kentucky, which I am in a suburb of. Not in Kentucky. I am essentially... Louisville sits right on the Ohio River, and I am right across the river from Louisville, Kentucky, so an Indiana suburb, if you will. And you note that this is last year's tournament fact sheet. We did not get a fact sheet for this year's ISCO, at least in time. We might get it tomorrow, but that does us no good because tomorrow is the Scottish Open DFS Tactics show. So we will have to do with last year's tournament fact sheet. As far as I know, there have not been major changes to the course, so this should work for us. This is originally a Chick Adams design, renovated by Keith Foster in 2023 and 2024 to get it ready for the ISCO Championship. This tournament used to be known as the Barbasol, used to be played at Keene Trace in Lexington, Kentucky. So if you are not familiar with the ISCO, that the ISCO took over last year, moved it to Hurstbourne Country Club in Louisville from Keene Trace and Barbasol. So just a little background on that. The Hurstbourne Country Club is a traditional par 70, 4 par 3s, 2 par 5s, measuring just over 7,000 yards. So it's a pretty short course. Don't let it fool you. It was one of the most difficult courses on the PGA Tour last year. We'll get into that, momentarily. But it was very, very difficult. Now, even though I am very close to Hurstbourne, I've never played Hurstbourne. It is a private club. You must have an invitation to play. I have not been able to play Hurstbourne, so I don't have any firsthand knowledge. But this played extremely difficult last year. The greens are bent, pure bent grass, this A1, A4. They are generally kept firm and generally kept fast. That is that is questionable this week, as we'll see in the forecast. But these are pure bent greens. The greens are pretty small at 4,750 square feet. So not quite Harbor Town, not quite Pebble Beach. But these are some very small greens that here at Hurstbourne. Not easy to hit. The fairways are zoysia, which is a different style of grass. Can be different to play out of. I don't want to say difficult, but different to play out of, especially if players aren't familiar with it. The rough is a combination of bluegrass and fescue, and you are reading that right. It is a half a foot long. This is very long penal rough around Hurstbourne Country Club, which adds to the difficulty. We talked about the green sizes. Not a whole lot of fairway. These fairways were pretty darn difficult to hit last year. It's not a big property, so there's not a whole lot of rough, but what rough there is very long, difficult. There are 7 water hazards throughout the course. They come into play on 6 holes. The average fairway width, 25 to 30 yards. There's a look at Hurstbourne Country Club very quickly in terms of a GCSAA tournament fact sheet. Chick Adams original design. We don't have Chick Adams filtering in the rabbit hole. Very small greens, very small bent greens that are kept, or at least they were kept last year, very firm and very fast. Traditional par 70, a short par 70. Don't let that fool you. It is very difficult. We have zoysia fairways, very long penal rough. That looks like it's going to do it for the tournament fact sheet. You going to attend? I'm thinking about going. I am not. I've got way too much to do, Hanka. This is the busiest part of my year with double tournament weeks. This week for the ISCO and the Scottish. And then essentially once Thursday or Friday rolls around, I'm already starting my double tournament preparation week next week for the Open Championship and the Corrales. So I wish I could. Friends of mine have talked about playing in the Pro-Am before, and we looked at the price and it was pretty expensive. So it is something on our bucket list, but we have not committed to doing that yet. We take a quick look at the forecast for Louisville, Kentucky and Hurstbourne Country Club. I can tell you it has been very hot around here lately. We haven't had a whole lot of rain recently. Maybe in the past 2 weeks we had some. It does look like we're supposed to get some weather overnight Wednesday into Thursday morning, and then again Friday morning. I can't confirm that. Yes, I am local, but weather changes in Louisville very, very quickly. It's the Midwest in the summer. Thunderstorms can pop up out of nowhere. So it does look like we have a decent amount of wind in the forecast, particularly late Thursday and Friday, maybe a little bit Sunday. Does look like it's going to be pretty darn wet, which could help scoring. Maybe. We'll have to see. But there is a look at the forecast. If you intend to particularly play DFS for the ISCO, feel free to reach out to me tomorrow in whatever means you is best for you. Social media, comments of this show, anything to that effect. If you're wanting an updated forecast for Hurstbourne, if we look at the super forecast, all we have is Thursday. Not a lot here, but it doesn't look like, or it looks like Friday is going to be the main weather that we would have to deal with anyway. So not a whole lot we can glean there. And then if we zoom out, taking a look at, maybe Sunday, but it's mostly Friday. We'll have to see if a wave advantage develops. I don't think it will, but based on this forecast, you would probably give a slight edge to Thursday AM, Friday PM, if this forecast held. Okay, with that, let's go over to BetSperts, Golf, and the Rabbit Hole. Take a look at our field this week, just very, very quickly. It is a weak field. I don't think anyone is surprised by that, considering it is an alternate field event. Our top betting option and highest priced player is the newly turned professional Jackson Koivunen, who was pretty darn bad last week at the John Deere. Max Homa's probably the biggest name here this week. He is here in Louisville, Kentucky playing. Seabez has played in some big events and played well in big events. Ben Coles off of the heartbreak last week at the John Deere. McCarthy, Taylor Pendrith, Tom Hoagie. So we do have some decent names here at the Hurstbourne Country Club this week. And of course, with this being a partnership with the DP World Tour, we're getting a handful of DP World Tour players. Manuel Elvira, or Nacho Elvira, Hugo Cossa, I think is how you pronounce that, Romain Langasque, Ricardo Goivera, Brandon Stone, Brendan Robinson Thomas. So we're getting an influx of DP World Tour players that did not qualify for the Scottish Open. This is their last chance to qualify for the Open Championship. With that, let's go quickly to the course fact page, and then I'll come back to the two players that we want to take a look at. Hurstbourne Country Club and the ISCO Championship, very short, or can't say very short, it's a short par 70, traditional par 70, 4 par 3s, 2 par 5s. It was very difficult last year. The winning score was 10 under, and that is because you see here William Mao went ballistic on Sunday, shooting a 9 under 61, just going completely ham. My guess is it was all in the putting. He gained 4.5 strokes putting alone on that day. Played just very well that day. But he shot 9 under on Sunday to win the tournament. 9 under, 7 under. So even par got you into the top 35, even close to top 30. This was not an easy tournament last year. I do believe it was very firm, very fast, which the forecast looks like that's not going to be the case. So maybe it changes a little bit. But with only 1 year of data, all we can go on is the assumption that Hurstbourne is hard. And if it doesn't play hard this year, so be it. Some other quick notes here. Again, bent greens, Zoysia fairways, very small greens. Rough is kept extremely long, very difficult to play out of. High missed fairway penalty, high rough penalty. Very difficult to gain strokes on approach. Difficult around the green. Putting was pretty easy. From what I understand, these greens, there's not a lot of complexity in these greens. They're just very firm and very fast, but not a whole lot of slope or undulation in them, from my understanding. A quick look at the scorecard. Like the opening hole, par 4 first, 515 yards. It is a converted par 4. This is a par 5 for the members. Played to almost a half a shot over par. Only 8.5% birdie rate. You've got several tough holes here at Hurstbourne. At least they were last year. Par 4, 515. Almost a half a shot over par. 2/10. A third of a shot over par. Quarter of a shot over par. 3/10. Almost a quarter of a shot over par. Lots of bogeys to be had. To be quite honest, not a whole lot of double bogeys. You do have the now par 4 first yielded a double almost 10% of the time. It's just a brutally difficult hole as a par 4. But the others are really just a lot of bogeys. You know, 4, almost 5% there. You've got 4% on the short par 4 15th, 4% on the par 3 17th. Lots of bogeys, not a lot of doubles other than the first. But just difficult around Hurstbourne. Your best opportunities to score, obviously, are the 2 par 5s. Quarter of a shot under par on the front 9, par 5. Almost a half a shot under par on the back 9, par 5. You do have a couple of shorter par 4s. One could be drivable. You would have to move some tees and pins around and or get favorable wind conditions. But it could be drivable. Par 4, 344. You do have 382, 377. You have a couple of shorter par 4s, but you also have some brutes. 515, 487, 486, 481. Just long, hard par 4s. At least they were last year. Taking a quick look at the strokes gained from last year. Again, it's only one tournament, so we kind of have to put all of our eggs in one basket and hope Hurstbourne plays similarly this year than it did last year. That said, it was all about irons and putting. You see your top performers here in terms of irons. That no one lost strokes with their irons inside the top 13 other than Taylor Montgomery. But he's a world-class putter, so he gained it all back on the greens. Only one player in that same top 13 lost strokes on the green. That was Nick Hardy. It's irons and putting and a whole lot of accuracy. High rough penalty. High missed fairway penalty. Hitting the fairways is difficult. Hitting the greens says average. I would say difficult. It's all about accuracy here. If we take a look at some quick specifics here, off the tee, driver usage a little less than the PGA Tour average. That's because you do have some, I don't want to call them forced layups, but players are being more prudent and hitting irons or fairway metals off the tee to try to keep themselves in the fairway because the rough is so hard to play out of. Driving accuracy much less. Driving distance a little bit higher. So even though driver usage was less, the driver distance was higher. That speaks to just how firm the golf course was last year. The interesting thing about Hurstbourne, you had a kind of a reverse bell curve in terms of approach. Total 50 to 125. Look at that. A third of your approach shots, or the professionals' approach shots at Hurstbourne, came from 50 to 125. That is speaking to a lot of these shorter par fours. Maybe these players were getting aggressive hitting driver, or they weren't attacking the par fives and two. Most players will, but maybe some didn't. You had a fair share of 100 to 125, 50 to 125 there, and 200 plus, 26%. But everything in the middle was much less. Look at that, 175 to 200, less than 10%. Half of the PGA Tour average. 150 to 175, quite a bit less. 125 to 150, quite a bit less. So that was the interesting part of the approach buckets at Hurstbourne last year. Around the green, 40% from the rough, 25% from short grass, and then 33 or so percent from sand. They weren't overly difficult. You can see like the scrambling percentages, rough slightly less. Now scrambling short grass was very difficult. So that's a bit of a mistake on my part. I said it wasn't difficult. Scrambling from the short grass last year was difficult. But overall, the around the green, it says difficult. Okay. Scrambling from short grass easy, but yet the scrambling percentage from short grass 53% versus a PGA Tour average of 62%. Something's not adding up there. I didn't do a whole lot with around the green, but we'll take a look at the model here in a little bit. Scoring was difficult, par 3s, 4s, and 5s. As a par 70, you have a lot of emphasis on par 4s here because you only have 2 par 5s to take advantage of. Okay, I'm not going to go through a whole lot of this. There were questions on 2 specific players. So the first one from Pre, you asked about Stephen Fisk at 8,700. I've got this all the way back to 2025, the beginning of 2025, just in case there are some players who came over here maybe for the ISCO last year, or maybe who were a part of the Scottish Open and Open Championship last year, but haven't played on the PGA Tour this year. So, best examples of that, like Todd Clements. Brandon Stone has played every once in a while on the PGA Tour, but it's mostly Open Championship stuff. Richie Ramsey plays the Scottish Open and the Open Championship. Marcus Kinhult has been here a couple times, etc. So that's why I'm going back to 2025. Anyway, Stephen Fisk. Interesting name this week. I didn't bet him outright. I am going to dabble him a little bit in DFS. The concern, as you can see here, Pre, his irons have been very shaky for the past 2 months basically. He has buoyed himself with excellent putting, gaining 7 at the Charles Schwab, 3.5 at the CJ Cup Byron Nelson. He is a very good driver of the golf ball. He didn't rate out terribly for me, but he wasn't in my top 15, I don't think. I am concerned about the irons, and I don't think he did play this last year to a top 30. Didn't putt well. You can forgive that. First time you're seeing the course. It's okay, Pre. It's okay. Depending on what his outright number is, I could maybe see it, but it's not one that I punched. So there you go. And then for Hanka, asking about Marty Doe, Zaiching Doe, didn't pay a lot of attention to Marty this week, Hanka. Yeah, irons have been sucking lately, but he's pretty good, 50 to 125. Yeah. So long as he can get himself reasonably to that range. Like I said, I don't hate it, but the irons haven't been good lately. In fact, if we go, let's just take that out. If we go, let's just go overall proximity and take a look at Fisk. 50 to 100. If we zoom in, let's zoom in a little bit. Like, he hadn't been great this year. Now, 100 to 150 has been fine. Like I said, I don't hate it for DFS. I definitely didn't outright it. Hanka asking about Zai-Ching Do or Marty Do. Played well at John Deere last week. That's a positive. Played well at Myrtle Beach, which is another alternate field event. Okay. Anytime he gets up into what I'll call big boy competition, he hasn't been great. There's just not a lot of consistency here. But with this tournament, that's probably going to be okay, because these players are playing this tournament for a reason. They didn't qualify for the Scottish. Don't knock Marty Do for this. This was at Keene Trace. So that wasn't at Hurstbourne. Not in love with it, Hanka. There were a couple other players that I liked at, right around his price, $7,900, that I went to before Marty Do. So if you feel comfortable with it, again, it's your money. It's ultimately your lineups. You play the players that you're most confident in. I'm not seeing a whole lot there. Let's just go ahead and take a look at a couple of things just very, very quickly in terms of a big picture view. I will back this out to the beginning of 2025. And let's look at difficult and very difficult. All we can do is assume that Hurstbourne's going to play the same as it did last year. If it doesn't, then we're going to be pretty weak. But I'm putting a lot of the eggs in the basket of Hurstbourne is difficult. So, when scoring is difficult and very difficult, players in the field this week for the ISCO, best performers: Vince Whaley, Ben James, Denny McCarthy, Jonathan Bird, Hankley Biota, Zach Blair, Miles Russell, Patrick Fishburne, Hayden Springer, Chandler Blanchet are your top 10 performers when scoring's been difficult, very difficult. Again, small sample sizes galore here, so take it with a grain of salt. But some others here: Chang Kim, Taylor Pendrith, Davis Chatfield, Seabez, Koivun's played well when it's been difficult. Okay, the only other filter that we could look at is weak fields. Very weak and weak. You could look at short courses, but I'm a little hesitant on that, especially since it's not driver heavy, it's mixed, so it will play a little bit longer. But anyway, your top performers in fields that are very weak and weak: Rico Hoey, Seabez, Vince Whaley, Max Homa, Stephen Fisk. So good shout there, at least in terms of these, weak field events. This is a lot of the fall, would be my assumption. Myrtle Beach, RSM, Bermuda, WWT, Utah, Sanderson Farms, ISCO. He played well the first two rounds and then kind of backed up. John Deere was weak last year. Myrtle Beach again. Corrales. Okay. So Fisk has played well in these weak field events. Jackson Koivun, Davis Thompson, Chandler Blanchet, Nacho or Manuel Elvira, William Mao. William Mao is your defending champion. Dunlap, Glover, Blair, Ventura, Kanaya rounding out the top 15. Gerbach is DP guy I like. Missed the 25 cut though. I think I have something on him, but I'd have to Gerbach. Do I have anything on him? Joel Gerbach. I think that's how you say it. I don't have much on him. Like he's represented Switzerland in the Olympics. Cool. Played the ISCO last year. Made the cut. That's all I got, Hanka. Like I said, I'm not going to collect DP World Tour stats. So if you know something from the DP World Tour that I don't, all the power to you. Okay, I do want to make sure I leave enough time for DFS for the evening. So let's go ahead and go to the mixed condition model I have made for the ISCO. We're going to start with 5% total strokes or total performance on difficult, very difficult. I've said it a couple times. I'll say it again. All I can do is assume that Hurstbourne is going to play difficult. We only have 1 year of data. If it doesn't, I'm going to be quite weak to it because I've got difficult on a lot of stuff this week at the ISCO. 5% there. 5% moderate and windy conditions. Again, this was based on the forecast that I had seen earlier today. The wind has kind of died down a little bit, so maybe you can put this 5% elsewhere. If that forecast that we looked at the beginning of the show holds. Really, it's only Friday. That would be a big issue. So maybe this is 5% you can move around, but just understand I had it in the mixed condition model from a forecast from earlier today. 10% off the tee when there's a high missed fairway penalty. We talked last night for the Scottish Open about all of the low missed fairway penalties. In Scotland, you've got room to miss, and you are not very punished for it because of the wispy fescue grass that's prevalent at the Renaissance Club. That's not the case here at Hurstbourne. This rough is thick, it's lush, very difficult to play out of. So players know they need to be in the fairway. And even so, it's not easy to hit the fairways here at Hurstbourne, or at least it wasn't last year. So 10% off the tee on high missed fairway penalty courses. 10% driving accuracy. I want players that are going to be in the fairway this week at the ISCO. 10% good drives. Guys are in the fairway. They're hitting greens. They're generally playing boring golf, especially when it's difficult. And again, if Hurstbourne doesn't play difficult, I will probably just flat out lose. That's all I can go on. 15% approach, 5% each in the various range buckets that we looked at. 50 to 100. I did go ahead and go 100 to 150, even though the 125 to 150 was quite a bit less. I didn't want to separate out fairway and rough 100 to 125. I was running short on percentage as it was, so I just looked at 100 to 150, and then 200 plus. So the approach ranges that were most prevalent last year is what I put in. 5% around the green. Players are going to miss greens this week. Guys are just going to have to be tidy. If you want to dig in deeper or be more precise, then you'd probably want to look at like scrambling from short grass. I just went around the green because you have a fair share of bunker shots and rough here as well. 10% putting split out between recent putting, so last 24 rounds, and then if we have maybe some bent specialists. So 5% recent form putting, 5% bent putting, and then finally 15% bogey avoidance. It was all about the bogey avoidance last year at Hurstbourne. So there's a look at the model that I've made for this week. Again, a lot of emphasis on last year, a lot of emphasis on accuracy, emphasis on avoiding bogeys and it being difficult. So if some of those things don't play well, I'm going to be weak. If none of those things, play well or up this week, I'm just going to flat out lose. So just being upfront with you on that. All right, let's go to Microsoft Excel, the reveal of my rankings very quickly for the ISCO. Quick reminder for returning viewers, for your information, if you're a new viewer, my rankings are based on 3 criteria. The rabbit hole rank is based on the mixed condition model that we just talked about, metrics, percentages, time frame. The rabbit hole will spit out a numerical ranking for each player in the field based on the model that I made. Course value is an attempt at giving the player a numerical value at how well they have played that course, normally the last 5 years. Obviously, we're just looking at last year for the ISCO and Hurstbourne, since it just started last year. That's why you see a William Mao with a 1, because he won last year. Paul Peterson finished runner-up. Ben Coles finished tied for 8th. Dylan Wu finished tied for 105th, essentially missed the cut. Tyler Duncan missed the cut. Bryce Garnett missed the cut, etc., etc., etc. Course value, course history is a part of my rankings, and then projected ownerships. And now I will be fully transparent with you as the viewer. These are much more volatile than the main slate. Gabe does the best that he can, but he doesn't focus on the alternate field events. His main focus, or his sole focus, is on the main tournament, the Scottish, the Open Championship, etc., etc. So he's kind enough to do extra work for me to provide these projected ownerships, but they are fairly loose. So just be mindful of that. But it does give us at least a baseline or an idea. So projected ownerships are also a factor into my rankings. We're playing DFS. We're trying to find unique options off of our fellow contestants. These 3 numbers get put into a mathematical formula and then spit out for the ISCO this week. Zach Blair being my number 1 player, Hayden Springer number 2, Ben Coles, Lee Hodges, and Chane Kim round out my top 5. 6,900 Davis Chatfield is 6th. Don't love this at all. He's just less than 1% owned, so he's not getting any look at all. He's avoided bogeys, and he's really accurate with the driver. I guess he's played well when it's been difficult in his 1, maybe 2 tournaments, but I would not put him 6th in this field. Lucas Glover, Ben James, Christian Bezuidenhout, and David Skins round out my top 10. Other than the explanation on Davis Chatfield, don't really have a whole lot of qualms with this. You see players like William Mao, Davis Thompson. Davis Thompson, at least by the pure analytics, rated in the top 10. He's getting hurt by the fact that he's so widely popular. Didn't play here last year. Things like that. Like Stephen Fisk, just outside my top 20. Also getting a little bit of ownership there so he falls a little bit. Marty Doe is, more middle of the pack, but even he is getting a lot of attention, so he falls. Anyway, enough of that. Let's sort on the price board, figure out where our fellow contestants seem to be going in the limited data that we have, and how we can maneuver around them in the 5 digits. In the 10K. Oh, sorry. Before I go on, I didn't have a chance to look. This was around 4 p.m. and Scott Piercy had not been loaded into DraftKings, but he is in the field. He took the place of somebody. Patrick Rogers, maybe? So Piercy is in the field. I just don't know his price. So he's not free. You don't get a free player. I just don't know his price. I just want to put that out there for you. Anyway, in the 5 digits, in the 10Ks for the ISCO, we have 3 players. Jackson Koivunen at 10.5, Max Homa at 10.3, Seabaz at 10,000. Max Homa rated out by far the worst. He is not playing well, especially by Max Homa standards. That said, I was ready to full fade Max Homa, and I had to go back and take a look. He's put together not 1, but 2 complete gains together, including last week at the John Deere. It's not like he gained 8, 9, 10 strokes on the greens and, barely got by with the ball striking. This was a complete gain all the way across the board. The Canadian, complete gain all across the board. He's done it 2 tournaments in a row. I want to fade Max Homa just because I know he's going to be one of, if not the most popular player on the slate. But he's arguably the hottest golfer coming in here, especially in the last 2 events. So understand that no matter where you go in the 10Ks, you're going to be playing, you're going to have chalk up here. Seabez is actually the pivot in the 10Ks in the 5 digits. And that's why I'm playing mostly Christian Bezuidenhout this week. Yes, he's not good off the tee at all. But I don't think that is going to be the biggest penalty for him. He plays pretty darn well when it's difficult. He's great in the wind if the wind does pick up. An excellent putter. Great around the green. I like Seabez quite a bit this week. The fact that he's the most unique of the options in the 10Ks made it a shoe-in for me to play him most. I will play some Jackson Koivunen. Not a whole lot. I did correctly fade him last week at the John Deere. He was just too popular. All the steam that he got. He's probably going to be very popular again this week just because of how weak this field is. I would be more inclined to play Jackson Koivunen this week, especially since he's already played here, finishing tied for 6th. So he does have some course familiarity. I wouldn't go overboard with it. 30%, a lot of projected ownership still, but I think he's in a better spot this week than he was last week at the John Deere. And then I will play Max Homa like twice, just because of how great he has been the last 2 events. If Max Homa is anywhere near the shade of player that he's been in the past, he's going to demolish this field. But we don't know if he's truly turned the corner and getting back to Max Homa ways, or if this is just a hot streak. Time will tell. But I'm going to play Max Homa once or twice more. I'll play him twice just to make sure I have him. Essentially, he would be my FOMO for the ISCO. So I'm going to play a whole lot of Christian Bezuidenhout. If he does not play well, I will lose. But I'm playing Bezuidenhout. I like the fit here, and I like the fact that he's a pivot off of these other 2. So I'm going to mostly go to Seabez, a little bit of Koivunen, and a light sprinkling of Homa. Moving into the 9s. Ben Coles really hurt me last week in terms of an outright. He was 82 or 84 to 1. I was really, really banking on him coming through and really helping the wallet out. He still played extremely well. This is still a really good course fit. I'm just not betting him to win. But there's nothing that suggests he won't play well again this week. Number 1 in irons in this field. Top 5 in driving accuracy. Hits greens, hits fairways. It's actually pretty good in the wind. And you talk about his short proximities. 100 to 150. Amazing. 200 plus. He's been really good. So, also finished top 10 here last year. All systems go for Ben Coles. Just not going to bet him outright. The one fade that I have in the 9Ks is Davis Thompson. Yes, this guy's a great ball striker, but he can't putt. He simply cannot putt. I backed Davis Thompson, what was it, at the Charles Schwab maybe? And it blew up in my face. Maybe it was the Byron Nelson. I don't know. This guy just cannot putt well. I mean, he gained 5 strokes at the RBC Canadian, and you see all the red beyond it. I mean, he's just not a good putter. It's as simple as that. Guy normally is a very good ball striker, but even that has been very underwhelming in the past 2 months. Now, it seemed like ball striking came back at the John Deere, Is that one good week, or is that him turning the corner? I think there's too much risk here, especially considering how popular he's gonna be. No thanks. I'll just fade Davis Thompson. This doesn't feel like a good Stephan Jaeger fit. This guy hits the ball everywhere other than the fairway. So no thanks on Stephan Jaeger. I'll play William Mall a little bit. I'm not in love with it. It's fine. I'm definitely going to be under 20%. I want to like Rico Hoey, much like Davis Thompson. He cannot putt. The difference is Rico Hoey's in at least a little bit better form ball striking. He is the number one off the tee player, particularly when there's a high missed fairway penalty. Good in the wind. But like a lot of other players, he just cannot putt. Just cannot putt. So I'll play him once. Denny McCarthy really disappointed me last week at the John Deere. I might play him once. Taylor Pendrith has not played well lately, but he generally does. He generally plays pretty well on short courses when you get the driver out of his hand. So I'm thinking Taylor Pendrith might be worth a look this week. Sincerely hope Max is back. Golf is more fun when he's playing well. Knows how to win. We'll see. Time will tell, Hanka, whether he's truly back or not. But with all that ownership, I just can't. I can't do more than once or twice. That's why I'm going to Seabez. And I refrain from having rooting interests. I try to be very objective looking at this, being a statistician. So there's a look at the nines. I'm going to play a whole lot of Ben Coles. Nothing suggests that this is not going to be good for him, even after the heartbreak on the 72nd at the John Deere. No thanks on Davis Thompson. No thanks on Stephan Jaeger. McCarthy is pretty much out the door for me. I might play him once. Taylor Pendrith might be sneaky. I want to like Rico Hoey, but man, he's going to drive you nuts with all the missed putts he has. Moving down to the eights. A couple players here that I really want to highlight. Zach Blair, number one player in my rankings. Played pretty well here last year. He's been playing well lately. I like him a lot. I like Ben James a lot. Rick James. I like Ben James a lot. Number one, driving accuracy. Number two, strokes gained total. Difficult, very difficult. This guy played the PGA. This guy played the U.S. Open. Made the cut. He's a good player. All the attention on Jackson Koivu. Rightfully so. Don't ignore Ben James. Ben James has been pretty darn stellar in his short time on the PGA Tour. Making the top 25 at the U.S. Open this year. My apologies. I thought he played the PGA. He didn't. Other than a really, really bad Travelers, you see how well he had been ball striking it. And take a look at his other Travelers performances. There's something about the Travelers that isn't good. He just doesn't like TBC River Highlands. Sometimes a course doesn't fit you. So I'll forgive this, absolutely, considering he has shown in multiple tries that he doesn't like the Travelers. Everything else, he's been pretty darn solid, including at a very difficult Shinnecock Hills. Toronto wasn't the best. It was fine. U.S. Open last year, he missed the cut only because he didn't make a putt. I like Ben James a lot. So I'm going to play him in the mid-eights. I wanted to like Lee Hodges. Don't get caught up in last week's T3. Lee Hodges gained like 9 strokes with the putter. Just completely unsustainable. Completely unsustainable. And I almost fell into the trap because he likes bent. Generally plays his best when it's easy or very easy. But again, he gained 9 strokes putting last week at the John Deere. That's just unsustainable. The putter had been really bad. Like you're trying to catch Lee Hodges when he spikes, because it's not often. But when it does, he'll do things like this. He's generally a pretty okay iron player. Off the tee, he's been a little bit hit and miss. Again, you might see the T3 from last week and think he's a steal. Just be wary that he gained all of it with the putter, and that's just not sustainable. Fisk is fine. I'll play Stephen Fisk. A little bit popular. That's why I like Zach Blair a lot more at $100 less pre. Less popular. Finished the same exact finishing position last year at this course. Blair is generally more accurate than Stephen Fisk, and I've put the emphasis on accuracy this week as opposed to distance. So that's why I prefer Zach Blair. Love Ben James. I'm not as high on Lucas Glover this week as I was last week, but this probably is a good fit for Lucas Glover. It's not long. Distance isn't mandatory. It's probably a good fit for Lucas Glover again this week. Good evening, P. Thanks for jumping in chat. Much appreciated. Hopefully you've been well. Did you partake in any of the U.S. men's national team? Anything like that? But it's good to see you in chat this evening. Much appreciated. Take a look at Preston Stout as well. He played very well at the John Deere as an amateur. Everyone, again, focused on Jackson Koivoon and Blades Brown and all that. Preston Stout's a good player. Irons are good. He has to learn how to avoid bogeys, sure, but number one 200-plus procs in this field, Preston Stout. So it's worth a look. It's worth a look. Moving down into the seventh, I tried to watch soccer but really couldn't. I understand it, P. I really do. I have to admit, I do get caught up in the pageantry of the World Cup. So anytime, every 4 years, I will get wrapped up in the World Cup. But I can understand how it doesn't get to everybody. Not everybody can get into it. In the upper sevens, you asked about Marty Doe, Hanka. He's extremely popular. Guys flopping and rolling around is so off-putting. I tend to agree. Good evening, Freebird. Thanks for jumping to chat. Very much appreciated. Can you do a deep dive on Wiesberger and Lindell? Do you like? Tonight is the ISCO, Freebird. This is the alternate field event. I generally try to keep all of my focus on the alternate field event. And I think Wiesberger and Lindell are at the Scottish. So if you come back tomorrow with that question, I would be more than happy to do a deep dive on Wiesberger and Lindell. And now, if they are in the ISCO, and I just went through that, then you can tell me to shove it. But I'm pretty sure Wiesberger and Lindell are over in Scotland. And tonight is dedicated to the alternate field event, the ISCO. But thanks for jumping in chat, Freebird. Very much appreciated. I hope you do stick around, because there is a lot of value to be had in these alternate field events. A lot of people everyone's focus is rightfully so on the main tournament, the Scottish or Open Championship or whatever. There's a lot of value to be had, especially in the betting board and the odds boards, outrights, for the ISCO and these alternate field events. The favorite of the ISCO is at 15-1. There's a lot of value to be had as long as you're willing to put in the work for it. So, Freebird, you're more than welcome to stick around. Maybe you find something that you like I was talking about on the odds boards. But if you decide not to, thanks for jumping in chat, and I do hope to see you tomorrow, because we will talk about the Scottish tomorrow in the DFS Tactics show. Taking on my question all the time. Dylan Wu is my last idea. I'm curious to see. He rated out extremely well, but we'll get to that here, Hanka. to wrap up the sevens here very quickly, like I said, Zichengdo, pretty popular. I'm going to go to Chan Kim at 100 less, Hanka, just because of the lack of ownership. Now, if you're talking outrights, okay, Marty Doe didn't necessarily rate out the worst. He didn't rate out the best, but he didn't rate out the worst. Chan Kim, I would much prefer. He's a very good ball striker. Also played well here last year. Fishburne played extremely well here last year. I'd rather go to a couple of other places than Zichengdo. Moving into the middle sevens, not a whole lot here I like. Might sprinkle some AJ Ewert. David Skins solo or tied for fourth last year. Pretty good with the irons. All about the par threes for him. But you want to talk about your short proximities? David Skins is your guy. So take a look at it. It's not great, but take a look at it. Lower sevens, Hayden Springer. I'm going to go to I'll go to Paul Peterson. I'll go to Bryce Garnett, Tyler Duncan here in the low sevens. But honestly, there's not a lot down here in the low sevens I like, which shows you I'm building, either extremely balanced teams or very, very top-heavy teams in my lineups for the ISCO. Moving down to the sixes, there's a couple of players that, I want to highlight here. Davis Chatfield, again, finished being sixth in my rankings. I think this is a little bit of fool's gold. He played extremely well in the one, maybe two difficult tournaments he had. Chatfield. I don't see it. Especially look at this form coming in now. He played well at the John Deere, but had missed 3, 4, 5, 6 cuts in a row before that. Whole lot of red in here. I don't know how he rated sixth for my rankings, but he did. Valspar was fine. That's difficult. Yeah, I don't see it. I really don't see it. Because we're here at the same price, we'll talk about Dylan Wu. Dylan Wu rated out extremely well for me, but this is my concern. The irons, typically okay. His putter is gone. Just absolutely gone. He has not gained strokes putting since the Sony. Now, he might have done it at Puerto Rico. We don't get those stats. But I'm saying in a measured start, Hanka, he has not gained strokes putting since the Sony, since the start of the year. He also hasn't gained strokes off the tee since the Valspar. Dylan Wu is a name that I kind of looked at, early today when I started doing my research or starting getting prepped for the ISCO, and then looked at his player profile, and I don't know how you can roster this with any confidence. I couldn't. So if you see something here, if you're getting attached to the irons that have been pretty solid the past couple of months, to be fair to Dylan Wu, the irons have been fairly solid the past couple of months, but he has not been good off the tee. He's been horrible with the putter. Played much better last year, but he missed the cut here last year. I don't see it. I don't see it. And he even rated out fairly okay for me. 18th. So he was top 20. Hank Lebiota, much the same as Dylan Wu. These guys rated out well, and I don't know how. I don't know how. The two names that I want to give you in the 6Ks, unfortunately, one of them is very, very popular. It's Miles Russell. But I am going to play quite a bit of Miles Russell. 19-year-old or 18-year-old prodigy. Played here last year. He didn't make the cut, but he's been accurate off the tee. He's been hitting greens. He's played very well when it's been difficult. He's going to have to be better with his longer irons. But I am going to play Miles Russell. The only other name, well, two names that I want to give you. One's in the 6Ks, one's in the low 7s. First name at 6,600, Filippo Celli. I think it's how you say it. Filippo. Ah. It's a DP World Tour player. I don't know. But he's actually been... He played very well at the U.S. Open. Gained 2 strokes with the irons. He just lost them putting. And Shinnecock Hills, those are very difficult greens. This guy's also made the cut in an Open Championship before. Very, very, very little to go on. I get it. But with all of the ownership that is coalescing around certain players, you're going to have to take a couple of chances. I will take a chance on Filippo here at 6,600. I'm not going to use him, a lot. Maybe once, maybe twice. But I'm intrigued by the irons. The fact that he's made the cut at an Open Championship before. I don't know. It's better than nothing. And then the last name I want to give you is purely name value. Because I don't know what he's done on the DP World Tour at all. He hasn't played anything PGA Tour worthy in 2026. But is Romain Langasque. This guy finished 3rd at the Scottish Open a couple years ago. He generally contends at Scottish Opens and Open Championships. He's even been okay at U.S. Opens in the past. And it'd be different if he was like 40 and on the downside or twilight of his career. He's 31. He's not over the hill. Clearly he's not having a very good year on the DP World Tour. That's why he's over here in Louisville, Kentucky instead of Scotland. But name value wise, this guy should not be here. So if you're in the 7,100 area, low 7s, and he's going to be unique because anybody playing the ISCO in terms of DFS, I would pretty much want to guarantee you they've never heard of this name. So it's worth a look. All right, let's build a couple of lineups just very, very quickly, especially since these lineups, these contests aren't as popular, not as much money in them, but I want to do you all justice and make some lineups that you can feel confident in putting in these GPPs for the ISCO. If we're going to take a look at the most common lineup, Jackson Koivuun, I would have to expect Miles Russell might be in this because there's really not a lot in the low 7s. Chris Ventura, 8%. Pontus Nyholm, 8%. That's about it. Otherwise, you're coming up to like Ewert and Shipley, Marty Doe. If they go Doe there, maybe Davis Thompson. Who was it was Pontus. 9,000. Pendrith is popular. Stephen Fisk. Like, we're looking at a lineup kind of like this as being the most popular, I think, with Koivuun. I put 6,100 Miles Russell in here because he's at 8% as a 6K in the in an alternate field event. So I'm guessing Miles Russell's going to get quite a bit of steam. That looks like one style of lineup that's going to be popular. The other one that's going to be popular is probably going to be something like Coles, Thompson. Again, if they can go Doe and then like Who's the other one besides Pontus? I'm just trying to use different names here. Chris Ventura. Maybe if they bottom out at Chris Ventura. Oh, yeah, this is perfect. You've got Doe. Well, maybe not perfect. Davis Thompson. Maybe they come off of Thompson to go to Stephen Yeager. That's only going to give him $100. Why would I do that? Stephen Davis Thompson. 7,900 again. So this is Zicheng Doe. Sid Ewart. Let's do like a Neil Shipley. And 82. Lucas Glover. Maybe not the most popular, but maybe that's the look of a balanced-ish type of lineup. But you're seeing all this ownership coalesce. You know, our fellow contestants seem to be going to one of the 10Ks, or maybe Ben Coles. Davis Thompson's popular. They're building a standard Stars and Scrubs lineup: a 10, a 9, an 8, maybe a 7 or 2, and then bottoming out at seemingly Miles Russell with 8%. So how are we going to maneuver around this? Well, it stinks because I like Miles Russell a lot, but the lineups that I've been building, it's not much in terms of uniqueness, but he is a pivot off of these other two. I've been going to Seabez mostly. I go to Seabez. You can go Ben Coles. And then, like I said, you can take that chance on Romain Langasque at 71. Paul Peterson at 7,000. Bryce Garnett, Tyler Duncan. Yeah, you got options down here. I'm just going to use Langasque to highlight the uniqueness here. But you can still build the kind of a shell of a Stars and Scrubs. Just have to hope that your players outperform the chalk. So, like for me, it would be like Zach Blair over. It'd be Ben Coles. These two are. Bezadenhout's going to have to outperform Koivu and Homa. Coles is a little bit chalky, but essentially you're playing Coles versus Davis Thompson. You're trying to hope that Zach Blair beats, Stephen Fisk or Lee Hodges. Couple of 7,300s here, or 75 and 71. You could do, like for me, Hayden Springer makes a lot of sense. You could even leave a little bit of money on the table, go like another 7,000. Like those are the kind of lineups I've been building. Just I've been playing the chalk up top, mostly Bezadenhout, but I'll do a Koivu. I'll even do Homa once or twice. Been playing my fair share of Ben Coles. I'm just staying away from Davis Thompson, staying away from Yeager. McCarthy is pretty much out the door for me. Or you can go pretty darn greedy. Let's do Filippo Celli. And again, I don't like using the same players, but he is the pivot, so let's go Seabez. In fact, let's do Homa and Seabez. Get even more greedy up here. Now this, you're probably not going to get duplicated by going double 10s. You're going to have to, go to a lower 7 that you like. Again, Paul Peterson, Tyler Duncan, Hayden Springer, things like that. I would try to fit Ben James into this. You might be able to, you might not, because there's not a lot I like at 74. Zach Blair, you can try to fit into this. Like, just try to get as much up top as you can, and go to a 6K player you like other than Miles Russell. So just to fill this out, let's go Ben James and I did Langasque. I did Peterson. We try Bryce Garnett. Why not? There you go. A little bit out of order. Apologies, but these are the style of lineups I've been building. Just trying to beat the chalkier players. And when I do use the chalkier players, you know, I'm going a very unique shell off of them. So my core for my lineups at the ISCO this week: Seabez, Ben Coles, Lee Hodges, Zach Blair, Ben James, Chan Kim to a lesser extent. I'll put him in orange. He might be 30 to 40%, where these others are going to be closer to like 40, 50, 60%. Hayden Springer and Paul Peterson. That's kind of my core for my ISCO lineups. Mixing and matching around them. You know, sometimes I'll use a Homa. You know, sometimes I'll do a Lee Hodges, Zach Blair, Ben James balance lineup. But for the most part, this is kind of my core. That's going to be it for the ISCO show this evening. Thanks to Pre, Hanka, P, and Freebird for jumping into chat. Very much appreciated. Thanks to everyone else out there who tunes in, watches, listens, supports the channel by liking the videos, commenting, and subscribing. Always appreciate it. Love what I do. Taking a very in-depth look at golf statistics, giving you a statistician's view of what he sees, trying to help us all win a little bit of money in the process, like we did last week with the Chris Goddard up outright. Do me a favor. I hate self-promotion, but if you like the in-depth talk of lineup building and going through player profiles and statistics, hit the like button. It really does help me out with you doing that. If you feel so inclined, subscribe to the channel. I am live normally three times a week, but this week and next week I am live 4 times a week, dedicating one night to the alternate field event each night or each week. So thanks again for all the support. Very, very much appreciated. For all of the wagers you've made this week for the ISCO, for all the DFS contests you play this week for the ISCO, and until I see you tomorrow night for the Scottish Open DFS Tactics show, may all your bets be profitable.